This video is like the weather around here. Just wait a minute and it'll change. I got a lot of stuff to cover today. Some of you have asked about this old truck in the background of some of the videos. This is a 1955 International R172. It used to have a refrigerated box on the back of it, and it has an interesting history. My dad bought it in 1988 from a guy downstate in New York, and that guy used it to travel around to different fairs and do chicken barbecues. So he would load up the refrigerated box with chicken and all of his barbecue stuff, and he would set up at the fairs all summer and sell chicken. For quite a few years, my dad used the refrigerated box to store his own chicken because he had a catering business, and eventually he quit using the truck and took the refrigerated box off the back of it. This winter he actually gave the truck to me, signed it over to me, so I have big plans for this. Let me show you the inside. It's been well used. The squirrels have made quite a home of it in here, but it's all original. Let me see if I can get the hood off and I'll show you the engine. It's got a straight 6-cylinder engine in it. I believe it's a BD 269, but I'm not really sure. And the BD stands for Blue Diamond, which was International's truck engine line. I don't know what my plans for this truck are, but I know one thing. It's a cool truck, and I'm going to find something to do with it one of these days. My original thought was to make it into a kind of rat rod and pull the body off and drop it onto a modern diesel truck frame and run it around that way, but I really don't know. I used to have a handle on life, but then it broke. Right, pigs? Today Dad and I are going to take apart this starter and see what it needs, and just as a test, I got it hooked up to a car battery. It sounds kind of rough, but it spins, and the Bendix doesn't come all the way out where it would normally engage the flywheel, so we know at least that needs to be replaced. See, the gear here is all chewed up from trying to start the tractor, and it needs a lot of work.
I think the first thing we always look for is to make sure that it has a witness mark, or a mark that says what the relation is between the two housings. And on this one, it's already have a mark, so we don't have to put new marks on it.
First thing we're going to do is pull the cover plate off, and that exposes the brushes in the starter. So there are the brushes, and there's another mark at this end to line both pieces.
Just pull the starter off and check the brushes always, and you know, they got quite a lot of wear still left on them, but as long as we have it apart, maybe we'll go ahead and replace them. We'll look at them and see.
This is the armature. The armature's the thing that spins, and then the field coils are in here in the case. It's all about magnetism.
Yep, and then we pull this out, and that separates everything. This is a problem I've always found on this particular starter, which I've had apart several times, is this bolt here that goes in and holds the Bendix and things to the shaft, which is here. It loosens up, or the little end of it gets turned off, and then nothing works. The next thing is we're taking it apart. We're checking this center bushing, this center carrier type bushing, and obviously it's got a lot of wear in it, so it's definitely going to have to be replaced. Next thing we need to check is obviously how much wear is in the end bushings, and we can simply do that by turning it end for end and checking the clearances on that. It's quite a bit, and as long as we got it apart, we should replace the bushing here, which is no big deal. It's just a matter of driving it out, putting in a new one. And also, there's one on the end plate that we'll have to check here and here to be sure, but it's a simple drive in and drive out type of bushing, so no big deal there. So basically it looks like we need the drive, 3 bushings, new brushes, clean up the armature here, where it's
Kind
got
of a
quite a lot of,
commutator. Yeah.
yeah. And I can just set this up in the lathe. Some of the old ones used to have that we had to undercut each one of these little grooves, but in the newer ones, it's just a matter of, I think it's plastic or something in there, so it doesn't have to be undercut like the old ones that had Formica in them.
1950 is newer.
Well, newer than some of the things I've seen anyway.
But if these make contact with each other, then it screws the whole thing up, because each of these gets charged in time to pull it through the magnetic field. So these need to be separated.
Yeah, and as you older guys that are looking at this, we would normally take, if we had the tool to do it with, we would set it on a growler and we would rotate it and use a hacksaw blade to go across it and make sure it wasn't shorting out in these. But we don't have a growler, obviously, and so we just limited that part. But it appears the way it run when we tried it and everything, that it seemed to be okay. We're just taking the screws out that holds the brushes in and checking to make sure none of the springs that put tension on the brushes to hold them down, make sure none of them are broke and that they all have good tension so we won't have to replace them.
Hey, have you ever tried to spell part backwards?
Part?
Yeah.
No.
It's a trap.
Okay, I'm the butt of the jokes today.
So that's it for that job. Dad's going to run starter parts up to D&W Diesel in Auburn, and usually they have what we need in stock to put it back together. Just doing odd jobs on the MD, waiting for the engine. One of the things was fixing these wheel centers for the front wheels. I don't know if you remember, but these stops were all worn up, and built them up with weld and then ground them back down to a square shape, and it's turned out pretty good. I think they're going to work a lot better. The last thing to do on these is the insides here have all worn out and chipped where the bolts go through, so I ordered a piece of hollow round stock, really steel bushing, and drill those out and then weld that new bushing in there. They're all pretty bad. Just things to keep busy while we're waiting. Next thing is to finish up this loader work, and Dad had a brainstorm on how to align these loose bushings. Remember, they had come loose in the holes and we were worried about them getting skewed, so the pins didn't fit in right. Got a long piece of 1 1/8" rod and run it through them both, and that way they'll be lined up automatically. These holes are really egged out. It must have come loose a long time ago. Nice to have this bucket loader done and ready for manure season. And I got one other thing in the shop to work on here. This is the gear that mates with the starter, the ring gear on the flywheel, and it's worn off just like the starter gear is worn. But fortunately for this, if I can lift this up here, these can be taken off and flipped. So that's what we're going to do. We're going to heat it up, take it off, flip it around to the good side. So that's it, easy, easy. Got a new edge for the starter to work on. I used to think I was indecisive, but now I'm not too sure. I'm trying to get everything set for when the engine comes back, finishing up little jobs, and one of them is to put the new tires on the new rims, and I put one together here. These are powder coated rims, which turns out is really nice. It's a lot harder to damage the paint than it is with a regular painted rim. So here's a tube, there's a tire, there's the rim. I'll show you how I do it with only a couple of tire spoons, which are these guys. I got this type and I got this type. Each has its own use, and some dish soap. My dad has a tire machine, but it's awful easy to just put these small ones on by hand, and tire machines tend to damage the paint a little bit more, so I prefer to do it by hand. I like to do this on the floor because it's just easier to get around, get everything, be able to put a knee on the tire, put some pressure on it. So first you start the one side bead of the tire down on the rim, and the inner bead should work down over this rim. The idea is you want to get that inner bead into this smaller diameter area here, and then work your way around, and the tire will fit on easiest that way. This type of tire spoon is really good for kind of catching just the edge and pushing it on. This is probably the trickiest part, getting it started. There she goes. Alright, so now we got to work the tube into the tire. You just work the tube in, work it around. Again, just like the tire, you got to work the tube into the indentation in the middle of the rim. It's tight until you do that. Turn it up. Find the valve stem on the back side. Push it through the hole. Then we got our handy dandy tire tool. Put that over the valve stem to keep the valve stem from coming back through the hole. Now we just do the same thing with this bead as we did with the other bead, and we're always working from the same face, the valve stem face. But you want to make sure, I've made this mistake lots of times, that your tube is down where it should be at the bottom of the tire, so you don't catch the tube with your tire spoons when you're working the bead on. Otherwise you'll have a leak. Now for this last bead, I like to only use this spoon because this little lip here will just go over the edge of the rim, and the less penetration you have into the rim, the better chance you have of not slicing the tube. You just pull that over and you just work it on. This is really the key to doing it without killing yourself, is to make sure you push the bead down into this area so that the tire kind of shifts this way, and you can pull the other bead on and then recenter the tire when you blow it up. Here's where the dish soap comes in. It's a lubrication agent, so I just run a real light bead down between the tire and the rim, and then smear it in with my hand on both the back side of the rim and the tire. I have tried doing this before I put the tire on the rim, but the tire winds up being so slippery that I wind up goofing around with it a lot more, so I prefer to put it on afterwards. And what this does is when you blow up the tire, it makes the beads seat on the edge of the rim. Otherwise, they might get stuck partially inside, or the tire might not center itself properly on the rim. Do both sides. You'll hear some air from escaping from between the tube and the valve stem. I like to blow it up to 20 psi or thereabouts to begin with. And then you take a look at both beads to make sure that the tire's seated all the way out on the bead, and it did. The dish soap really makes a difference. Now here's one of the key things I do, and I think it helps, is after I inflate it to about 20, I take the valve stem out and deflate the tube. What I'm doing here is I'm letting the tube come down, and inflating it and then deflating it helps it work out any wrinkles that might be in the tube. So when I inflate it a second time, hopefully those wrinkles will be worked out. Blow it back up. And there we are. Easy peasy. Now I have front tires, but no tractor to put them on yet. All right, you monkeys, I'm coming in to see you. Look out. You goofs. I gotta fill up your water barrel. You guys are drinking like a bunch of sailors. All right. It's the double drink. What are you doing? You got in the way of my shot. You guys just want to come and see me all the time. You miss me when I'm gone. I know you do. The triple drink. Oh, no. Now that's the way to keep pigs from wasting water. Well, it's been another productive day on Just a Few Acres Farm. Chilly, but that didn't slow us down any. I hope you have a great day, and I'll see you next time.